quite often people have who come to study Buddhism have quite a bit of appreciation for the philosophy, the idea of Buddhism, everything is empty, which they sometimes take to mean, well, nothing really matters. We're just going to hang out and be Zen. It's very simple. And quite often, even highly intelligent people will look at Buddhism and actually criticize the Buddhist ritual practice, the vows, the precepts, and so on, saying that, well, we could really do away with that. We just need the teaching of very simple. We can do away with all the fancy bowing and stuff. And people have done that. There have been a few teachers who have decided to just not use forms and just teach meditation. And quite often people, I want to meditate, but I don't really want all that other hocus pocus, all that bowing and petitioning for whatever, this, that, or whatever. So is there a problem? Where she's going? No. Okay. So it seems very necessary to include something, especially when something has been coming down 2,500 years of this tradition, to take a look at it rather than just judge it offhand and say, well, we don't really do that. Let's just take the heart of the matter and let's take that rather than go through all this rigmarole, all of this gesticulating, or is that what you call it?
Genuflecting.
What?
Genuflecting.
Thanks. Is that Sanskrit?
That's Roman Catholic.
Roman Catholic. So, but all of this kind of thing, which is the body, speech, and mind are not really separate. They just look like it. That's why quite often we think we can do one thing with our body and do something else with our mind. Do one thing with our mind, do something else with our speech. It doesn't really work so well that way. You may think you're getting away with something, but someone who is really, really present sees what is going on. That being said, someone who's really, really present is not going to criticize you or even point it out to you. Quite interesting that someone who has dealt with their own self-deception, their own ignorance, their own difficulty over a long period of time, and has finally made some peace with themselves, whatever it took to do that, are very clear about what's happening in front of them, no matter who or what it is. And that clarity, it doesn't necessarily mean that they are going to come out and point out to you or criticize you or judge you, even in their own mind. They just see the way that human beings are suffering, and people are spending quite a bit of their time trying to get out of that suffering or shut down that suffering or stop that suffering, shall we say, prematurely without really seeing the cause. Like continuing to put something on a cut, or continuing to put something, maybe a cut isn't a good idea or a good image, but continuing to take some kind of medication that covers up the symptom, but the underlying cause is never really inspected. Quite often the underlying cause isn't inspected because it's just too much damn work. There's no money in it. There's no money in it. I got an idea. Let's come up with some chemicals and feed people those things. And let's do away with their symptoms. All the while under the surface, everything is roiling around and causing maybe much more difficult problems. You know what I'm talking about. All of you do. You know it, your own version of that. So this is what comes from not really, really seriously and sincerely inspecting what our life actually is. This is what this building is for. Even though this started 2,500 years ago, it's very, very much up to date. And when I say it's up to date, I'm saying that when you come in here with your body, speech, mind complex, it's matrix we call a human being, don't be so sure about that. It's a big universe. When you come in here out of your whatever 60, 70, 80 years of life, whatever segment you happen to be in, of that linear thing that we so much take for granted as being real, and you place your butt on the cushion and you look at the wall, you actually have an opportunity to see what is true for yourself. Like I said in the meditation instruction, get your own authority, as my teacher Kobun Roshi used to say. Get your own authority. Don't listen to anybody. Don't listen to me. Don't listen to anybody. Don't listen to the Buddha. Don't listen to an old monk. Don't listen to anyone. On the other hand, listen for a while. Listen for a while, and you'll know when. You'll know when. That's why in our tradition we have what's called a retreat practice. Just like sitting down for 1 hour, like we did tonight, is a mini retreat. You actually have retreated from your everyday life of, I like it, I don't like it, it's good, it's bad, I should, I shouldn't, they shouldn't, they should, we should, they shouldn't. Why did they do that? Why did I do this? Why did they do what I'm doing when they know that what I'm doing is wrong, and what they should be doing is what they think they should be? Well, you know what I'm saying. You might as well be tying your synapses in a knot. So when you come in and sit down, even if it's only for 15 or 20 minutes or an hour, you're kind of taking a mini, very mini retreat from this everyday life that spins around. It's called samsara. It's a Sanskrit word that means wheel. The Tibetan word for that is korlo. Spinning and spinning and spinning. It's just like your life is like you're born and you get right on the tilde whirl. They still have tilde whirls? Mm-hmm. I'm sorry to hear that. Last time I was on one of those, I was 18. I got off and lost my supper. It's the last time I did that. So what do we do about that? How do we really train our minds to see what is true? How do we really get our own authority? Well, the way it's taught here in this ancient tradition, there's 3 aspects to it. There's lots of aspects. The ones I like to point out are hold still and look, train the mind, train the intuition, hold still and just observe what continues to go this way, go that way, go this way, go that way. And train yourself not to pursue it. Train yourself to look at it. But if it ducks around the corner, don't follow it. Hold your seat, stay where you're at. It'll come back or not. And then when you get up off the cushion and spend some time studying these teachings, if you feel so inclined, it's up to you. Study the Four Noble Truths, the Eightfold Path, the 12 links in the chain of existence, the 6 realms, the 3 realms, the 5 skandhas, and on. They go on and on and on. Very boring. On the other hand, you might find some part of those concepts, some area where, like the 3 marks of existence, the 3 things that designate existence is, from the Buddhist perspective, is impermanence, nothing lasts. You can't find it. If you find something that lasts, look at it for a while. It doesn't last. Slowly start to rotate into something else. Even cement doesn't last. Look at Gaza. All those buildings are bombed. And the next one is suffering. Everything is discontent on some level. Now, you might get away with a whole day where you're not particularly discontent, but it comes back. And this doesn't work. That doesn't work. This isn't quite right. I need more of this, less of that. I need more of this. This is the way you could describe suffering. Desire, wanting more of one thing and less of another. We do it all the time. Sing, around and around. We try to get more of this and shut down that. Manipulate. And the third of those 3 marks of existence is egolessness or no self, or there is no solid being in anything. It doesn't say there isn't any. It doesn't say there isn't something happening. We're just saying it's not solid. Sometimes people say, well, if you're egoless, then that means there's nobody, there's nothing, well, it's not exactly that way. We have to teach it that way so you'll bring your gaze on that self-centeredness and look at it deeply. Actually, there's a whole lot going on there. It's just not a separate kind of thing like you think it is, or like we often think it is, that we have to defend or protect. Or if you see what that is, you're fearless. This doesn't mean you won't run away from a mouthful of teeth, like a dragon. Doesn't mean you won't be back. But that's not really fear. That's just, what's the word for that? Common sense, that's right. So those three. So those are three little very simple concepts that you can use to support your awareness or support your way of seeing what is going on. See that, okay, it says in the teachings that things are impermanent. Okay, are they? It's Buddhism is not a belief system, nothing to believe, nor is there anything to disbelieve. So it doesn't take a position on that. Impermanent? Yeah, looks that way. Is everything suffering or discontent or dissatisfied? Pretty much we tend to shut down on it or distract ourselves out of it for a while. Interesting example of that is children who are in a war zone. Occasionally, if you watch television at all or the news, you'll see children playing in the middle of a horrible situation, teasing each other and so on. There's a little gap of 3 hours where there isn't anybody being shot or bombed or anything. But they're not escaping it completely. And no self is basically saying there's no solid being. You're not a solid situation. It's not solid. The simplest way to notice that is how your emotions change. It's almost like some people experience that more than others. Some people are able to just lock right down and not feel anything. And then other people are just at the mercy of their emotions going this way and that way and this way and that way. It's all no self. Solidifying, if it were really solid, it was real, you wouldn't have to, and you wouldn't particularly be thrashing around. No self, no solid being, no separate being. So Buddhist ritual, vows, forms like the four that we did just before the prostrations, before the sutra, the Heart Sutra, beings are without number. I vow to liberate them all. What the heck does that mean? How can you vow to liberate? What's that about? Find out what it means, or not. Go do something else. Afflictions are endless. I vow to dissolve them all. So it's just what it's basically saying is to look at the difficulty and see that it's already without any support. It's already unsupported. Dharma gates are beyond measure. I vow to enter them all. Dharma gates, everything is a Dharma gate. If it's challenging for you, something that's challenging, you use any example. If you have a bad temper, you're very irritable, that's a Dharma gate. That's something you can bring awareness to and see, what is that? What is it that's going on with me when I can get irritated so easily? What? Butsudo Mujo Seigando. The way of the Buddha is unsurpassable. I vow to become it. The way of the Buddha. What is the way of the Buddha? The basic way I like to talk about the way of the Buddha is no more warfare. No more of this deep down in your two fists are coming together. And then we either want to blame ourselves, I can just never get this right, or blame someone else. Well, if they hadn't done this, or my parents hadn't done this, or I hadn't been mistreated or something, then I wouldn't be having. We're not saying there isn't some truth to that. Of course, causes and conditions get together and make life very difficult. We're just saying that if you keep going over that and digging a trench with that kind of situation, what you're actually doing is, rather than actually remembering it or recalling it, you're using that to avoid living your life in an open, healthy, uplifted way in which you're of service to others. You spend a whole lifetime digging around and just feeling bad. So the idea of the ritual, sitting down, training the mind, doing the studying, and then the idea of the ritual or observing the vows, or doing, like we did today, the Heart Sutra, doing some prostrations, are symbolic of various aspects of the teachings. But you can't know what these are by looking at someone doing them. You can't have any idea. And you may not have enough openness to even check it out, or enough interest. You may just be much more interested in doing something else. But what you will find if you do these practices, if you sit and face the wall, you'll be introduced to your own mind, to who you actually are. You won't have to talk to anyone else. I'm not saying you wouldn't have to talk to somebody like me if you're a meditator, but what I will generally do is send you right back to your mind. And the way in which I do that might not be cold and heartless, like, get your butt back in there and meditate. What are you doing coming to ask me questions? Or it might be. I lose students when I do that. They don't want to be treated that way. And then, yes.
Just a few minutes ago, you said listen for a while. You were talking about don't listen, but you said listen for a while. How should somebody listen? How should we listen to others?
Listen, when you listen to others, don't worry so much about the information. Don't worry about something that you can take issue with. Don't worry so much about making sure you get what they said. Listen to the tone of their voice when it goes up and down. Listen to the spaces between their words. That's actually a listening too. And listen with your eyes. See what their body is doing. See how they express themselves with their hands or not. See how they shift in their seat when they change from one topic to another. See how they lean back or lean forward. See how when they start to talk, they might look away from you and then talk and then look back at you when you're talking. Or they might look away from you when you talk, and then when they talk, look right at you. I mean, there's just so many ways. And you can also listen to all the other sounds that are coming in around. We're not separate from anything. I'm not here to get you to believe anything. In fact, and in fiction, don't believe anything I say. Leave here and forget it. That's how important this is. It's so important you don't have to remember it. So sounds, the tone of going up and down, it's an extremely intimate thing to listen to someone. Yes, sir.
How can it be so important that you don't have to remember it?
You don't even have to ask that question. Now explain it to everybody. It's so important that you have to realize it yourself. It's not just a matter of hearing what some teacher said and applying that. So what I'm saying, of course, you should listen to what I'm saying, but also it's not so important to remember if it starts to fall away. There's a lot more going on here with your mind, with what's happening with your mind, in your mind when you, Lisa.
Oh, you can finish.
I don't have to finish anything.
Dharma gates are numberless. I vow to enter them all.
Yes.
What is it to enter the Dharma gate?
Well, to one of the Dharma gates that you, very simply, and you can think about this and how it would apply to you or to anyone else for that matter, is if you're a practitioner, then whatever arises for you as a difficulty, something that's very difficult or challenging or difficult to understand, maybe you would see how you are, even though no one has deliberately done anything to you, you feel like you're being disrespected in some way. You can't quite put your finger on it, or someone else seems to be getting credit for something, and you're saying, well, I've just been doing that all along, and suddenly this person's getting all the accolades for something I always do. So a little bit of maybe resentment or jealousy, and rather than go in and build on that and say, and maybe whine or complain about it, to actually use it as an awareness practice and see that that is about your self-centeredness. That's about wanting to be special, wanting to be that, wanting to be acknowledged for something. And so the Dharma gate would be, instead of using that as something to fight with or justify, so passion, aggression, and ignorance are the three poisons. We either fight with it or we make excuses for it, which is passion. So aggression, passion, or we distract ourselves or shut down or think about something else or ignore it or make up a bunch of ideas about it so we don't have to reflect on how difficult it is. And instead of using it as a Dharma gate, so instead of using it as something possibly to even contemplate. And actually, when we contemplate something, doesn't mean we're necessarily thinking over and over again about the concepts. It might mean that we're actually allowing our mind, painful as it may be, our awareness to sink down into the texture of that feeling. Is that helpful?
Yes, thank you.
Welcome. Other questions? Yes,
Bailey has one.
Bailey?
She says, or asks, how is getting your own authority different from just doing whatever you want?
Because doing whatever you want, you'll feel like you have to justify it to certain people. You won't be able to just do whatever you want. And people that disagree with you, you'll be irritated. Why can't they see I'm just trying to be me? Why don't they just let me be me? Or, I mean, there's something about that we can't just do what we do. I'm not saying that doing something and having a good friend of yours think you're full of it. This is crazy for you to do that. What are you moving to Honduras for? That is nuts. And you might think, yeah, it's probably nuts. It probably does look that way. So we're not saying you should ignore and you're kind of isolated from everybody because you're just doing your thing. You're saying that authority is without an explanation. That you are present and you don't have to figure out your future. I sometimes say to people, if you really live out of your heart, you won't make any decisions. If you live out of your mind, then you're going to be thinking, what's in this for me? How can I get ahead? This won't work. This will work. That won't work. And I'm not saying we shouldn't do a little bit of that, but Buddhism has been called the middle way, not too tight, not too loose. So a little bit of that is good. But what do? We tend to overdo, overthink, overjustify, So if you have your own authority, you won't even know it. You just will notice that you don't really make decisions anymore. Things come up that you're not sure what you're going to do about it, and then you just start to do this. And then another thing that is a fork in the road for everyone else, they're evaluating, thinking, strategizing based on their self-centeredness. Whereas you are just looking at the world as it arises, very, very much without a reference point, including this, including that. So you find you're no longer an individual like most self-centered people are. But it's not very noticeable to others. Other people aren't really going to see that particularly. They just notice that you don't spend too much time evaluating. Yes, sir.
I was gonna say, would you equate that with like an inner force? To have your
I would not.
authority?
I would not equate it, because if I equated that with an inner force, then I'm right back to evaluating what's going on and getting out of, this is the inner force time happening.
Right.
Aha, now, okay, that's the inner force. Now, okay, my inner force is arising. Do I have time to eat breakfast or not? You know, inner force is here. So
Right.
I'm not mocking you as much as it may sound like. I'm just saying that jumping onto some kind of a conceptual model for it is extra.
Right.
You can use the inner force to lead you towards the other bank of the river. Like a raft, you can use that, but when you start to get next to the other bank of the river, you actually have to step off the inner force onto the other bank. You have to actually leave your concepts behind and continue your journey, and that journey will likely be without a raft. It might even be without a body.
And that's the authority that you can get.
That's the authority. Yeah. So you don't have to gain this authority. This authority is already yours.
Right.
Don't say right too quick.
Okay.
Okay, don't say okay too quick. See, what that does is if I say something and you say right, then your conceptual mind has approached and has grasped onto what I've said as a concept. But if you actually heard it, like responding to Chazon's question about how to listen, was that what your question was? It's that you won't know what's being said. This is why I'm encouraging you to not necessarily to overthink this. As you're listening to me, listen to the tone of my voice, listen to my hands wiggle around, which they always do. Look at the flowers. You know, I'm not saying go take a nap in the back of the room. You do that, and I'll have to ask one of the monks to carry you out. Yes, Jim.
The ego wants to be special. It wants
Yes.
to be smarter, funnier, faster, and all that.
Yeah.
Is there a way in which we are special? It's not related to ego.
Yes, but it has to be realized. And when you realize it, then you know there's nothing to promote, there's nothing to advertise. The way in which that everything is special, that everything is completely sacred, that this is a sacred world, even the garbage pit is sacred. From the point of view of Buddhism, there's no good and evil. There's just good. There's just energy that has gone awry and is trying to bite its own tail, and is trying to control other energies. And so, yes, go
Is
ahead.
it realizing that not separate? Is that
Yeah,
largely what evokes?
yeah,
it?
you're basically king of the universe. You just don't have any say so.
Power, no authority.
No, you have the authority.
I have
You just don't have the power.
That's it.
It's a very interesting, and don't misunderstand. I'm not saying that the way I'm expressing it that you should think about how you feel and think, well, that doesn't make any sense to me. I'm saying take the words I'm saying and see if there's a way you might have some access to that may not line up exactly with what I'm saying. But we're all in a little bit of distress, so you wouldn't even be in here. I'm saying just take a little bit of that distress and see if what I'm saying wouldn't connect a little bit on some level with your insight around this. The most important thing I could say to you right now is find some time, sit still, and watch what continues to watch how you continue to deceive yourself. It's embarrassing to see that. We don't really want to meditate for very long because it starts to get very uncomfortable. Unless you close your eyes and do mantras and do various kind of things that will appease your crazy mind. Not wrong, do that if you need to. Yes.
So there is like meditation that is with your eyes closed.
Pardon me?
There is meditation with your eyes closed too. And in the practice that you do.
Maybe, but generally speaking, it's the way I teach it is sit down, hold still, have all the senses open, and have your eyes. I mean, if you're having a terrible time, you might have to close your eyes part of the time. But I don't teach closed eye meditation because we don't live that way.
No.
Got it.
Got it. I mean, didn't get it. Not right. For some people say right. Okay, that's a lot of cover up right there. Other question? Yes.
Yeah, from Chick May up in Traverse City. He asks. Chick May. Yes, until I have my own authority, what should I do?
You should sit a lot, meditate a lot. Meditate. Every time that you get out of work, meditate. Just before you go into work, meditate. Schedule yourself. You won't do that if you just do this when you casually. It won't happen. You just keep saying, well, I just don't have time. I'm busy working. So you almost have to, it's like saying, I don't have time to take a shower. You gotta work. Well, you should take a shower. Or your coworkers might scrub you down at some point. So we all have a little bit. I know it's difficult. I had to work myself and meditate also. It's difficult to find time to practice. That's why we have this temple, as I say over and over again. So the vows, coming back to the original idea there, is sit, study. So those are the two wings of the bird, basically. And the actual body of the bird is the body of the eagle, the body of the condor. Are the sutras. Chant the sutras. And you won't know what they are unless you've chanted them a few hundred times. And then you'll notice that when you chant them, nothing happens. When you first start chanting, you think, what does that mean? What does that mean? What is this? What is that? This makes me, oh, this is, or maybe, oh, this is so beautiful. I just love this. I just love the sutras. Or else this sucks. You're going to make us do all this and we got to bow down to this guy? This is weird. All this. So what I would say is, it's a form, and forms are empty. But in order to see that, it's an astonishing thing to do a form like this and actually begin to experience it as empty. Empty. You're actually doing something that's highly ritualized. It's like making a sandwich. Well, not exactly, but you know what I mean. It's like you have a ritual way of making a sandwich. I'm going to ask for a show of hands. How many people has everybody in here made a peanut butter sandwich, first of all? Is there anybody that hasn't made a peanut butter sandwich? That's what I thought. Okay, now here's the question. I want everyone here who makes that peanut butter sandwich exactly the same way every time. Show of hands. Okay. With and without jelly?
Strawberry or grape.
Oh, okay. Well, still, but you do it the same way every time.
Wait a minute, you didn't say anything about a peanut butter and jelly
Right.
sandwich.
I didn't? What did I say?
I said a peanut butter sandwich.
You added the jelly?
I did. But it's the same way every time.
I did too. I had a jelly.
Did you? Interesting. Okay, I'll finish it. So, okay, how many people do not make a peanut butter and jelly sandwich? Jelly sandwich the same way, change the way they do it every time.
Every time?
Well, not, but change it, make it this way. First put, put the peanut butter on. And does anybody ever make it, put the peanut butter on the bread and then the jelly on the other bread and put the two pieces of bread together with nothing in between? Yeah. Mm-hmm. So you've taken acid, right? Joke. That was a joke. Completely a joke.
What happens when you take acid?
That's what I took acid. It was. But what I'm saying is, I'm just saying, I'm just using this as a ritual. It's a very simple, mundane kind of ritual that we do. And in here, no matter how hard, you can ask any of the temple residents, the monks, the people, Senchu or Sokuzan, excuse me, or anyone who does this practice a lot, you can ask anybody, and you'll find out that even though we do this the same way, and the instructions are exactly and they're fairly precise, we do it differently every time. But in order to see that, you have to literally do it dozens or hundreds of times before you see that you never can do it exactly the same way, and it's always, there's something a little off each time. Have you found that to be the case? Have you found that to be the case? So it's like, there's no way you can do it the same way. But when you endeavor to do it exactly the same way every time, because it is a ritual, the awareness starts to get very, very strong in this area. Where you really get, and a part of it is getting very self-conscious. Ego really shows up in the Zendo. And everybody, you can't walk in here and function without feeling self-conscious or self-centered or something. So, but it's something that you, and I could talk more about it. I could give another hour on the topic, but I think it's something to consider rather than jump to a conclusion about rituals are bad or any kind of opinion on it all. I would say just hang with it for a while and reflect on it. Look at what that is, and whether it's in any tradition, Buddhism or Roman Catholicism or whatever it may be. Different situation. Theism and non-theism is quite a bit different.
But the ritual is still there.
Pardon me?
The ritual is still there. Okay.
Yeah, they're doing rituals, but the ritual there is tied in with some kind of exterior worshiping something that's separate from you. And in Buddhism, and particularly in the Zen tradition, but other forms too, it's non-theistic, so you don't posit a creator. You also don't posit no creator. It's not exactly atheistic either. Since you.
What is it to experience emptiness?
There are different levels, just like it says in Kempo Sotrim Jamso's progressive stages of meditation on emptiness. So there are different levels of that, even more than the ones he's talked about. But it's to see that any form is actually empty of what we attach to it or ascribe to it. Anything that arises, any form at all, it actually is not what we project onto it. Form is empty of our projections. And the actual emptiness is also empty of that. So it returns back into form again. You can't find a reference point in it. More?
So does it end up being the experience of not knowing?
Fundamentally, it doesn't end up. It doesn't end up. That's part of the emptiness part. It doesn't actually end up, but you don't mind. But you're no longer the human mind or this mind or the mind of this living being that we all are experiencing this very moment. Finds itself in where? Right here, right now. The linear quality of time is blown out. It's just blown out. There's no past, there's no future. We're not saying that something won't happen and something did happen. We're just saying that your life, who you actually are, is always here. It's always now. It can't be anything else but now. Have you noticed that if you think about what the present or you think about the future is going to be like and you remember what the past is like, that there's no real way to tell which is which? There's no real way. It's like looking at a dream, memory of a dream and a memory of an actual event. You know, they're just like crepe paper. They're not solid. They're changing anytime you look at them or rethink them. Writing down dreams, which I know you've done, like going back and looking at something you've written down and seeing that dream wasn't exactly like that. There was other things there that I didn't, or the way I've described that there It isn't exactly like that. So things are constantly changing and in flux all the time. Do you understand the linear? It's like it just collapses into this. What we used to worry about, what you can't even worry anymore. Maybe a little bit. Like car payment. But not much. So the interesting thing about that is the emptiness, that when that emptiness is really seen, then everything that is appearing is begins to radiate, because it's because the emptiness is so full of what is. Yes, sir.
So are you saying emptiness is boundless?
Kind of. Yes.
Is there another word you can use besides emptiness?
Formlessness.
So when you say that everything is empty of what you think,
Yes.
so there's a form, I'm looking at the altar,
Yeah.
and it has legs, it has incense. So how is that empty of what I'm thinking?
Well, it's there, but what you think it is empty. So something is there, but what you think it is it's empty of what you think it is. What it actually is, and this is the startling discovery, is not separate. What it actually is you're actually looking at a table version of yourself, because you're not separate from anything. And so therefore you're very, very separated, but you're separated in such a way that is not about projecting or going to war or anything. There's just separation, like the fingers on a hand are separate.
So how does that concept help us relieve suffering?
Because it helps us by seeing that we begin to do less grasping, less fixation, less going to war based on our presumptions about what that is. That's an enemy. This is good. This is bad. I shouldn't. What will they think about what I'm thinking? What do I think about what they're thinking about what I'm thinking? The constant circular chatter, accepting, rejecting, building, tearing down. More. Any other questions? Any questions? Sheldon?
How does seeing things and describing them, how is that chatter?
When you see something and you describe it in your mind, I like it, I don't like it, it's a good thing, it's a bad thing. It's just, we just keep running down little ideas and interpretations and opinions and ideas, and we're judging ourselves and judging others, and then we're judging our judging. We're thinking we shouldn't be judging, which is just more judging. That's why I say when you're sitting on the cushion, if negativity comes up, do nothing with it. Stop trying to, when I say stop, saying if you can, stop trying to make yourself into somebody else. Be genuine, be who you are. If you're going to really work with the negativity that arises in every one of our minds here daily, first we have to actually be that. Stop covering it up with other ideas, things, analyses. We have to actually sit and feel the visceral quality of our body, speech, mind, heart, kidneys. Yes.
It doesn't seem like we're judging all the time when we see things and label them.
Okay. So your judgment would be is we're not really judging.
Are we actually judging things even though it doesn't feel like that's what's happening?
Maybe. If you're clear, you wouldn't ask me. You know, wouldn't. So it's not, it doesn't matter so much that we're judging or not judging. This is the part that's so difficult to, it's not about being different. It's about being genuine and no longer at war with it. And you may go on judging the rest of your life, but you won't believe it. You'll feel the judgment. It's like any of you that were trained to hate black people when you were a child, was drummed into you. You know, you may not also may have that come up as something. It's just a trigger pattern that comes up. You know it's not true. You're not buying it. The reason I can talk about it is that something like that happened to me. But I'm not particularly haunted by those. I know they're not true. They're just things that get triggered, and then I'll notice something like that. And then it's it can't catch fire. There's no oxygen to keep that going. All the oxygen that happens in this situation goes into the vow, save all beings. That's what all I'm intending to do, best I can. But it doesn't have anything to do with, judging and evaluating, condemning, accepting, rejecting, which is what samsara is about. If you notice that, the whole world is about trying to find out who's right, who's wrong. And if you're wrong, put them in jail. If you're right, make them president. Or, the extremes of those kind of things. Give rewards to people that just happen to be on the, be born in a good climate.
But they'll get there. Climate change is coming.
Yeah, flipped around.
Like Yemen.
Huh?
Like the cyclone in Yemen.
Yeah, that's
more rain than
they've ever had there.
years.
Yeah. So, any final? We've got a little bit. Any final questions before we close? Especially about forms of ritual, Buddhist ritual. Like I said, some people want to let's take that right out of there. All we really need is the basic, meditation and so on. Talk to somebody who's meditated for 20 years with no forms. Yes, sir. Shoka.
Earlier you used the word manipulation.
I did, huh?
Yes. As someone who's observing vows and working or endeavoring to work with other
Yes.
people, what is manipulation?
They're trying to be different than you are, trying to be, you're talking about with yourself or with others or both?
Someone saying that you're
Manipulating? Oh, that's, it would vary. It depends on who it is, what your relationship to them already is. And I would since you're asking, I would say don't do anything with it. Don't believe it, don't disbelieve it. If you believe it, that's believing it. If you disbelieve it, that's also believing it. Don't do anything with it. And nothing lasts. Nothing lasts. And that, if that really is occurring, it'll start to show up in some way that will actually go beyond what someone else's judgment is about it. You'll actually see that it's probably true. Or you might see that looks more like their projection about that because they're so manipulative. They're trying to work with their own manipulative approach to life, so they tend to see manipulation in everybody else. They haven't quite got out of the 4th grade into the 5th. Where they say, I think maybe I'm manipulating. Yeah, I think that's it. Yeah, I'm the one who's manipulating. And here I thought everybody else was. So if someone is accusing you of manipulating, someone actually comes out and says, you're being very manipulative, Shoka. I can't imagine who would say that to you. If someone was to say that to you, then discuss it with them. Say, how do you mean? No defense, no offense, no defense, no nothing. The only way we can actually ever get anywhere with anything is to actually give something enough room to be what it is, so that then we can see. If it really is manipulation, and you do nothing with it to artificially change the person's mind before you've even investigated, or justify yourself by saying, well, I'm not really manipulating, I'm just trying to get you to do what I want. How's that manipulation? Or some other explanation. So actually taking some time to, and it's the way you'll know you're probably doing this correctly is it probably will be quite uncomfortable. It's really uncomfortable to have someone accuse you of something and you're not really sure whether you're doing that or not. Because then you realize you're kind of trapped. So I would say that. There's a possibility you might be doing a little bit even less than what they're saying, but there's enough there that they're picking up more of it. But no explanation, no justification, no condemnation, no anything. Take the heat. Take it on behalf of all beings. So I may be manipulating, I may not be manipulating, but I'm not gonna defend that. And then work with that, and then use that as a Dharma gate to help you see more deeply into the way, into what was it that you were doing that would trigger someone to go into their own misunderstanding about manipulation or their own history of being manipulated, to that you did some little thing that triggered them to blame you for that. You know what I'm saying? So use it as a Dharma gate. If somebody is blaming you for something you probably are not doing, but you could be. So it's always an awareness practice. It's never about what arises in the awareness. It's the awareness itself. It's like the sky. Sky doesn't argue with clouds. Yes.
2 questions.
Yes.
We're running a little
Yes.
long.
Take 2 more questions.
This is from Ian. He says, it seems the largest arguments against meditation is that it brings those further into depression and worry. Would you agree? Why or why not?
Well, sure. I think it could. I mean, there's so many stories around this. Somebody who meditates could start to fall into the very area they have been able to avoid through all kinds of activity. Everything from golf to shoeing horses. But now they're not doing that. Now they're meditating. And then they're beginning to go down into some cave of depression or something. So I would say that can be. That's why it's very important, if you're going to meditate, if you're going to do it the way it's taught here, to have a teacher, to have a sangha, to have, in other words, a community of people to support you and to spend time with you, people that won't cave into your bullshit, but will support you in an authentic, genuine way, which they actually are a spiritual friend, not someone who's going to pamper you. So I would say yes, and the sources or the causes and conditions that are there are absolutely like a labyrinth. It's a labyrinth. You can't enjoy how a tree looks, and pull its roots out of the ground and investigate all the roots. Am I supposed to look there?
Oh, Ian's in there.
Which Ian? Which Ian is it? Which Ian is it?
He's from here in this area. Yeah.
Hi, Ian.
And then Kozan has a question.
What up, yo? Yes.
But Kozan's screen froze, so she can't hear the answer.
I didn't do it.
I'm sure it's not us.
Froze. Screen froze.
So she says, or asks, sometimes when we practice with a group in meditation, study, and even sometimes with forms and rituals, it becomes entertainment or club-like. In this situation, what can be included as a reminder of the basic intention of Buddhist practice?
So that's a long question, but the main thing is that if there are, the club-like thing is not going to happen as much as long as the forms are very strong. The forms are strong. Like here, 15 minutes before every sitting period every day, you hear the Hanan bell. It's not because we have to have a Hanan bell clacking out there and hitting. It's a form. It's something to actually give this temple community and complex some kind of structure If you're upstairs and you hear the Han bell, you don't have to look at a clock. It's time to sit. And it strikes you in a way that because it's a sense consciousness that's not, that actually can function just fine without a thinking process. So it touches you in your heart more than it does in your mental processes, or at least as much. And so what I would say to that basically is more forms. We have 6.5 hours of scheduled meditation here. We don't have 2 hours like some places do. We don't have 3 hours. We have 6.5. Not too many people do that unless they come here and spend a month or two. But it's very necessary, to do all of these forms. Just like we only chanted one of the sutras tonight. And in the mornings we chant 4 of them, or 3 of them, and then the lineage recitation. So, but there's those forms, and then there's some other ones we do other times. And there's study at noon, which is a form called Footsteps. And then there's so all of those are there to help people support an awareness practice. I'm not sure exactly. I think I have an idea, but it's not something I can comment on unless I'm really involved with. And UU is a Unitarian Universalist, where they have meditation groups come there. Usually those kind of groups are people that really like meditation because it's very popular. A lot of people out there selling it these days. Well, you need to meditate. Even people who don't meditate, like Eckhart Tolle, writes wonderful books. And he's even come to the point where he's starting to tell people to meditate, even though he didn't get to his realizations through meditation. Very interesting area, but realizes that, well, maybe people should sit down and look at their minds for a while. Not a bad idea. It's just doing a lot of it with forms is helpful. And dedicate the minute.
May the merit of this penetrate into all places, so that we and every sentient being together can realize the Buddha's way. Ji-o san chi shi-ru. Shi-son mu-sa mo-ko-sa. The 10 directions, the 3 worlds, all Buddhas, all venerable ones, Bodhisattvas, Mahasattvas, the great Prajna Paramita,